Hey guys, I'm Lost. You may know me in the hololive community as the one you lost. I am a freelance artist and somebody who mainly just draws for fun. Typically, I like to explain things on my previous channel, but this is a new channel I created solely for art and to kind of give myself a fresh start. So, as my first video on this channel, I think we ought to start with one of my favorite characters from hololive, Bay. Now, Bay is one of those characters that's kind of a comfort for me to draw. So, as you watch me work on this particular artwork, allow me to take the time to explain my thought process and everything behind this one. So, whenever I was going for this pose, I was kind of going for like a lounging, very comfy look of Bay, almost implying that she's on a bed, but not really showing anything. You know what I mean? It was definitely hard to get the pose to look correct because you want it to look comfy and relaxed without being too tense. And relaxed poses are a little bit trickier than you would think. They involve a lot of kind of softer movement. It's hard to explain. It's very much, it's stiff if it doesn't have a level of looseness to it. So how we go about creating looseness is we use what's typically known as the S-curve or flow line. And my goal is to have the head and torso tilted to the left, but the body implied to be tilted to the right. So we create almost an S-like motion. And that is one of the more relaxed and comfortable positions that the human body can take. I didn't want to show the full body in this artwork. I wanted to mainly focus on a very close-up of the character, focusing more on the head and the chest, which was where I wanted people to look. Now, the great thing about Bay is she has bright red hair, which is very eye-catching. So my goal when I created this pose was, even though I'm focusing on the head and more the chest area, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to be applying neutrals to the body. So, say the tank top is going to be black, and the face is going to be very obstructed in shadow, and we're going to kind of create the overcast of the head back onto the chest itself. And that's the main idea. I was going for a hand right here, but I ended up not liking it. That happens. Whenever you work on an artwork and you feel the idea is not working, sometimes the best thing you can do instead of beating your head against the wall is to change it up. You know, it's not necessarily giving up so much as it is not forcing yourself to do something that maybe isn't even that good to begin with. So experiment and try to make it a little bit easier on yourself. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem in an artwork is to let your idea go and try to come up with something new. So the eyes I was actually a little bit unsatisfied with, and I hope to fix that in the final product, because this particular artwork is actually just a concept. It's not a fully rendered artwork. It is still sketchy, and it is over-rendered for a sketch. That's why I prefer to call these types of drawings concepts and not sketches. Because as much as they are sketchy, it almost feels wrong to call them a sketch because of how much work you put into them. I've always said that I find it very frustrating when artists over-render a sketch and then keep calling it a sketch. And the reason why is I feel it can be very dejecting to younger artists who are feeling insecure about their artwork to say things that take a lot of work are sketches, because that implies to people who aren't very far along in their art journey that what you did was easy and it didn't take skill to do, or like, you know, it's kind of obnoxious whenever some art guy goes, oh, it's just a sketch, whatever. But the reality is it still took a lot of skill to get to where you were, so I choose to call them concepts because I feel it's easier to not be as overwhelming to newer artists, because I really want to support newer artists, especially nowadays where AI has technically made art to the unskilled. And anyone that is willing to pick up a pencil or make something themselves is somebody that should be praised regardless of skill. I don't think you need to be the best artist in the world to have your art have value. But I do believe that for your art to have value, you have to have at least made it yourself. It's really hard to claim that you have put anything into the world when you yourself did not create it. And I know this got rambly and a bit more onto the AI art side, and I'm actually going to stop myself here from going down that topic because it is a topic that frustrates me, and I know some people are very passionate about it, so I'd rather not go down that road. The only thing I want to say is that I have tremendous respect for anybody in today's age of technology who is willing to do and create something themselves, and I think that should be applauded. So, but I will also say, I will not judge you if you use it, because we're not putting the genie back in the bottle. It's here, it's staying, and I'd rather not judge people who just want to see cool things being created before them. Just do us all a favor, and if you're going to do that, don't call yourself an artist. But we're getting back to the topic at hand in this artwork, and you'll notice that I draw a lot of like messiness in the hair, and that's a personal preference of mine. I really like to draw messy hair, and I've lately, as you can see with the skin here, I use darker tones because I like to brighten it up using the add glow effect, and that is typically how I do most of my lighting. I like to add an add glow on top of the highlighted areas. And I'll explain that more as we get to it, but for right now, we're just doing base colors. And base colors, a good rule of thumb is to not add too much color to the base colors. In fact, you want it to be a little bit muted, because we're going to be using post-processing in the finished artwork to bring the colors back to life. A lot of what makes colors pop is contrast, and how much you actually don't use the more saturated version. If you use a desaturated version, the little details of saturation are actually going to make it look more vivid than you would if you just went straight to the top right on the color wheel. That actually hurts your vividness. There should be a variety of tones and colors in your artwork. And I prefer to do that through very subdued neutrals and then having the shadows be contrasted with very vivid darker colors. So I'm doing little adjustments here to kind of adjust the face a bit, and we're going to start rendering with everything above being on a multiply layer. Now, I don't always recommend you do it this way, but this is personally the way I like to do it. It's kind of just a quick way to add color onto everything and shadows by putting a multiply layer on top of everything you just made in its own folder. So we're using the blending tool to kind of render it out like we would do in the final product. Now I use the airbrush tool, and I turn it into an eraser by hitting C on my keyboard. That will automatically turn it into that. You see on the color wheel, the two boxes and the checkered box right there. That checkered box actually means eraser or transparent. So turning your whatever you're using into an eraser is as simple as hitting that checkered box. So now we're kind of applying the shadow to the front of the face because we want the light to be above and slightly behind her. But because of how the character is facing, her chest is a bit bigger, so it pokes into the light. That's why there's light on the chest, but not so much on the face. So if that makes sense, that's kind of like my thought process behind all of that. And yeah, now we're just adding little details and kind of bringing it all to life. There we go. And we're going to start the background here pretty soon as well. I made the background super simple because my goal was to kind of not have as much detail in the background, but on the character. This is what I was talking about when I said I used the add glow layer to bring the colors to life. There's a little bit of level correction there. And now we're going to put it all into one folder, and we're going to add kind of highlights in the hair. And finally, we're doing the background underneath the full layer. And like I said, it doesn't need to be super detailed. Technically, I'm going to be blurring all of this anyway. Adding little bitty adjustments here and there. Now we're adding some refraction of the light onto there. We're adding kind of the breath, almost like she's like excited. Now we add a hard light clone of the layer, and what that does is it kind of makes the colors pop a bit more, some tonal curve, and now we're kind of making the tail blur into the foreground. And we're making the background here a little bit blurry as well. And that is basically what I did with this artwork. There's not much left that I really did here besides the little heart bubble. That was just a effect that I wanted to do. It's not really necessary, but I thought it was cute. And that is basically how I made this artwork. If you like this video, I really appreciate it. If you like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Helps me out a whole lot. Thank you for seeing my new channel, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye.